what happens underground? What's under our cities?
There's different interests down there. You might have a water main owned by one entity, which is next to a gas main that's owned by another entity, which is crossed over by a telecommunications duct that's owned by another entity. You got different ownerships in here.
It's like surgery.
It's like brain surgery.
Welcome to the Level Design Podcast, a podcast for architects and engineers who want to thrive in this industry by creating more freedom, fulfillment, and financial security. Join us in uncovering how to restore value and honor to the unique people who choose to be designers and caretakers of our built world, and why it's essential to the future of our society, our industry, and our planet.
Hey, Scott.
Morning, Miles. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Cold.
Yeah. 5 feet of snow.
Big country, right? So you're like doing well. And then our southern team's like, oh, they're in shirts and I'm freezing. It's cold. In the Rocky Mountains.
Different experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, good. That's good. Office is busy. Crazy over here, all over the country. Yeah, we're busy. It's good. Good day.
That's awesome. It's crazy how different the infrastructure has to be due to the location and the weather. Like,
yeah,
you don't have to worry so much about snow load in Texas.
Yeah, I have. So when I do engineering in different parts of the country, I get lost in where I'm at a little bit. I'm like, why is this structure so minor? It's like, oh, that's right, there's no snow load. So I'll be seeing projects from all over the country from moment to moment as our team brings in questions to the headquarters, and I'll be getting involved in the tougher ones, and it's hard to keep up. Earthquake, snow, wind, coastal. It's like, wow,
that's wild.
Big country, lots of things, lots of environments.
Yeah,
super fun though.
So we are officially in the 1700s. So we're in that first decade of the 1700s. The kind of more notable things that I'm seeing, at least from an infrastructure standpoint, first worldwide, then we'll do America, but roads were primarily dirt tracks or cobblestone paths. So limited travel. Travel was limited to horse-drawn carriages and pedestrians. Roofing materials ranged from thatch to slate or clay tiles, depending on different regions and economic status. Windows were typically small and glazed with glass panes, a luxury reserved for the wealthy.
I'm not sure the glass wasn't being imported at this point, but yeah, I'm sure it was quite a luxury to have glass.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. This is not the most granular look at the past. That would probably require a lot more research, but
gives us an image, though, doesn't it? Gives us an image of U.S.
for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, and then we have settlement patterns in the U.S. in the Americas, in the colonies. They were settling along the Atlantic coast, primarily in regions with favorable climates and access to waterways for transportation and trade. Coastal areas provided fertile land for agriculture, while rivers and harbors facilitated commerce and communication.
Some foundations are being set, and related to American infrastructure, some things are happening. So one would be governance, right? How do we fund? How do we work together for a group system, not just a well for my house? Yeah. This is where it starts. Rights of way, streets, are set aside for transportation, but the thinking is, this is actually a good place for utilities too. So the idea of a public right-of-way or publicly owned property reserved for utilities and transportation and public infrastructure begins.
Right.
The foundations are starting to be set. Yellow fever in Philadelphia gets to be such a problem. The water gets so contaminated So we're starting to see enough people in urban areas to be contaminating waters. We talked about this for a while, but now it's getting people sick. Brand new country with indigenous people. And now we're urbanizing and we're polluting and we're causing our own illness.
Yeah.
Another foundational issue happening right here, early 1700s. Some of the first distribution systems for water in Philadelphia to cure this became funded and designed. So steam engine pumps were put in clean water source, which is probably a river, pumped through wooden water mains. This starts to get funded and built right now in Philadelphia in response to yellow fever, polluted water. We still wrestle with this today, but these are starting to be the foundations of American infrastructure ideas. So here we go. This is the beginning of it.
Yeah. Yeah, access to clean water was a significant challenge, particularly in densely populated urban areas. Public wells and fountains provided water for drinking and household use, but sanitation was often poor. Privies and cesspits were common forms of waste disposal, leading to unsanitary conditions and the spread of diseases like cholera and typhoid. Indoor plumbing was virtually non-existent, with chamber pots serving as the primary means of waste disposal in homes. So we just take our life for granted compared to that. That's brutal.
Yeah.
But that was the norm. And
our infrastructure today is past its peak, so it's degrading and we're starting to see some things happening with health and water systems. Right.
Well, this is a fitting topic for the rest of our conversation today. It's nice to kind of paint the picture of what pipes started to look like back then, what they were used for, and why they came to be. We clearly realized that water is a big source of health or lack thereof. So we need to figure out a way to keep it separate and clean. So 1700s.
Yeah, 1700s, the beginning of wood water mains and pumps. Interesting. And rights of way and governance and mutual funding of systems. It's now become very, very complex, these systems. If we talked about water, we could just talk about one utility underground in our rights of way, our streets or our easements reserved for public use. That land, what's going on with that land and underneath that land now that we have so many different interests in those rights of way, so many different services are buried below the ground. Our utility systems, our private utility systems, our public utility systems, our power, our phone, our energy like gas mains, all these things are often reside underground below our roads. And our technologies have changed, of course, over the years. We're talking about wooden water mains in the 1700s. Then we go to cast iron. A lot of our cast iron products are joined with lead joints because lead was a great way to heat up and easy and pour into a joint and seal it. Used for 200 years after that. We were using lead way into the 50s and 60s. We still saw lead services and stuff. And then we go into ductile iron, water mains, still used today, ductile iron with cement lining, joined with rubber gaskets more frequently, but push-on joints. And then we're getting into our plastic pipes, which are more long-term and better product, but we still have all this older steel, cast iron, lead systems. I think there's over 2.2 million miles of water mains in the United States.
Wow.
Okay, so what's a million mean? All right, so that means if you take a water main, take
2.2 million.
Yeah. Let's just pick a middle-of-the-road water main. Let's say it's 8-inch diameter. That means you go from one end of the country, get yourself a backhoe, Miles. You're going to dig and put a water main in the ground from the Pacific coast where you are to Atlantic coast, and you're going to dig with a backhoe. Okay? and put a water
Okay.
main in the ground and bury it in a roadway. Remember, you're not digging through open ground. You're in asphalt
Right.
or concrete. And you're going to do that 733 times. Back and forth from ocean to ocean, 733 times. That's how much water main we got in this country.
So can you break that down different? I'm having trouble understanding.
I was just trying to give perspective is what is a million miles? We can't even, but think about traversing the country over 700 times.
I see. It's like the intestine thing when you line your
Exactly.
intestine straight out. It's like really, really long.
Right. So if I could get you to drive from coast to coast 733 times, think about that. But you're not going to do that. You're going to get in a backhoe and dig in the street 733 times.
Yeah, you got to go down underground.
And you got to cut the asphalt. You got to put the asphalt or concrete back, right?
That's a lot of freaking work.
And all that stuff's C- grade rating.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning it's going into poor condition.
So,
right. Wow.
Yeah.
And then it's so interesting. It's like the Michigan thing, or it's like, how could this happen? How could we have bad water? How could this happen in America? We're in this entitled or misunderstanding, which is why we have this podcast, is like, hey, this is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big deal.
It's a big deal. And the more I learn about it, the more shocked I am. And the more I'm realizing we're going to have to get very creative with how we solve it. Like, it's not something you can necessarily just throw more money at. Like, we got to change the way, it feels like to me at least, we have to change the way we think about it and the way we do this moving forward so that it's economical and it's sustainable. Because the price of, we've kind of talked about this, like the price of each taxpayer's, I think it's like, what is it like? I forget the amount of road that each taxpayer owns, but whatever that is, the price has gone up from like $20 a foot or something to 90.
Right.
Something ridiculous. I'll have to look that up to verify, but it's increasing.
The cost of asphalt per ton is what you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah.
We used to pay $20, 20 years, 2 decades, $20 a ton, and now we're up in that $90 a ton.
Right. That's a pretty staggering increase. So we need to figure out how to do this better.
It's interesting.
Looking for a new opportunity? Interested in being part of an expanding network of independent engineers and architects who are thinking differently? Level Design Partners is on a mission to create prosperity for design professionals, the industry, and the world, using innovative business systems and a culture of collaboration. We believe that traditional education and firm structures want you to be a cog in their machine, depriving you of key skills needed to thrive, thus commoditizing an entire industry in the process. Gain access to skills, tools, and systems by partnering with Level Design Partners. Learn more at leveldesignpartners.com.
So we've got some slides here.
You got some slides?
Yeah. You mentioned recently, which is the topic of today's episode, basically like what happens underground, what's under our cities, how does that work? And first off, I just want to like paint a broad picture here as someone who's green to this stuff. Even just this paragraph is interesting to me. So underground infrastructure consists of pipes, cables, sewer pipes, tunnels, basements, and other underground structures. The purpose of these structures is to support and improve vital functions and services such as gas, water, and energy supply, waste processing, communication networks, and transportation. It's invisible, but it's indispensable. The lifelines of underground infrastructure are necessary for daily life, the well-being of society, and the economy. So it's something that the average person like never sees.
Right.
And then, every now and then you'll see people going down into manholes or they're digging up roads and going down there and fixing pipes and stuff. It's quite a process. And when you mention that the grade of our infrastructure, our roads, is so poor, you just add that on top of the mess, and it's pricey
and difficult. There's different interests down there, and you might have a water main owned by one entity, which is next to a gas main that's owned by another entity, which is crossed over by a telecommunications duct or fiber optic duct that's owned by another entity. Nice photo, man. Wow.
Yeah,
right?
I think
this is what we're talking about.
This has got to be multiple things here. I mean, water.
Yes, it
water
is
for sure.
Yeah, so the red thing, that's a probably 18, 24-inch water main. So this is going to be the Big Bertha. I used to call it the Big Bertha water main supply. So that's handling the big supply. Next to it, I'm guessing, I'll see if I get this right. It looks to me like see the little green thing on the right of the valve?
This thing?
That's a coupler. So that's what we use to fix a break or to splice a pipe. Yeah.
Huh.
So next to the big, yep. So that's how we join two old pipes or join pipes together that are ductile iron or steel. That's a smaller diameter pipe that all of the services to the buildings connect to. We don't connect services and fire lines and the small connections of each building to the big pipe. We have a smaller pipe. So there's two pipes for water here. I'm guessing that was a water main potential break or whatever. But
yeah, it looks like it's not even connected.
It's not yet. They're probably working on it.
I got to just point this out. This is kind of hilarious. Look at all these strings just like kind of holding things up in place. It's crazy.
Yeah, the whole thing. Because they had to dig this out by hand.
Yeah.
Whatever they're working on, right?
I see. Yeah.
So that's manual labor at very expensive rates working around this. And the asphalt above it, you can see the streets torn up.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't just put a backhoe in there and start digging.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. I mean, you have to it's like surgery.
It's like brain surgery.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And when a contractor hits, get a load of this. So the contractor community has to call a phone number to locate. There's actually a locating service that paints on the asphalt street the location of all this stuff. So that's the contractor's warning that all these interests, all these different owners and facilities are marked in the pavement. And now it's the contractor's responsibility if they hit something. So if you hit a water main or you hit a fiber optic, you get fined.
That's so frustrating.
Can you imagine the insurance companies covering this contractor?
So they're drawing lines on the street.
Yep.
Telling you which lines are there, pipes and stuff. And then if they hit a pipe, it's the contractor's fault.
And the contractor's insurance usually.
It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of cost. You think you, as a taxpayer, as us, we pay for that insurance. Yeah. We pay for that locating service.
Oh my God.
We own these facilities that get damaged. Yeah, big dollars. Get your wallet out. And all of this is in poor condition now. And so if I'm going to dig up this water main, let's pick one of these facilities. I got to dig down there and yep. I love it. Let's go to that one. Let's go back to that one. I love this. It's like, what are you going to do? Who's going to pay for what? You got different ownerships in here.
Yeah.
And who's paying for the dirt and the asphalt to come out?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about job security. If you're working on this stuff, it's just, I mean, we're going to have in the next decade, so much of this is going to need work that
Lots of
It's a
job
lot of job
security, but
security.
are we going to keep up with it? That's my question. Or are we going to start losing our convenience? Are we going to start losing our human convenience?
I mean, yeah,
We're past the peak.
it's pretty wild. Here's some, like, it looks like pretty old piping that has been, rusted, but it also looks like maybe it's got wires or plastic going through it. So I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's interesting to see. Here's the manholes.
Yeah, these are conduits. So acting as a protection mechanism for when you do dig it up, there is a protective something before you get to the cable.
Right.
So you got the cable and the conduit to take care of, right?
So this, what do you know what this might be? Like, is this electricity?
Yeah, let me zoom in. Probably not electricity. No, I can tell.
I mean, it's a lot of small wires.
Yeah, I can't tell what this is. We got some gas main in there. Yeah, I can't tell what it is. But it might be fiber optic ducts.
Oh, yeah.
Communication.
Okay. Look at this, how much of the street they had to tear up.
Yeah. How much does that cost you? And guess what? I mean, you're not even you're fixing one thing probably. You're not fixing every utility in there. All the utilities didn't band together and said, okay, we're all, here's the scares the hell out of me in these urban areas is not everybody's working together to wholesale upgrade.
Right.
There might be one or two utilities in on this project, but there's probably a lot of it being left behind and aging still.
So you have to kind of like dig it up each time you want to fix one thing, essentially. Yeah. And that's, every street has this. It's so overwhelming how much is under there.
Yeah. Now think about the human capital here. So think about the men and women that have the knowledge of this going on, their system, or the public works departments, the water utility, all of these human capital that know this stuff and where it's at and its condition, 50% of them are retiring in the next decade. 50% of the people that know these systems are having parties and saying, see you later, without the people behind them replacing them.
Right.
There's a shortage.
That's crazy.
It's a problem. American Public Works Association has been trying to work on this for a while. The American Water Works Association has been working on this. They literally have operators of these systems. Nobody's attracted to it. Nobody wants to get these jobs anymore. So they're like, people are leaving because literally they can't, they're so old. They're so dedicated, but they're so old, they literally can't go to work anymore. And they can't get anybody to come in and tackle this problem. Yeah.
It's crazy because you walk through the world and, you see a crack in a building, a beam or a crack in the street or something that shouldn't be there. And you think, someone knows about that, right? Like someone has awareness and is like solving that for us, right? And the more I look into this stuff, it's like, no, not necessarily.
No,
there's too much, and it's all too much. A lot of it's underground, and now you just much. That's kind of scary.
This is a really cool American job program. That's optimistically, I'm like, this is just. And I often say this taxpayer work, this government work, this utility work, this work is an economy in itself, and it stays within the borders of the U.S.
Right.
So it's not like doom and gloom. It's like, hey, this is U.S. economy laying in wait.
Right.
Super
That's
cool.
a good point. Really good point. All right, let's do a couple more images here that are, to me, really interesting. I don't know what this is, but it just kind of goes to show like the age of this project with this old steel and then how big the pipe is in the underground tunnel.
Yeah, I don't know what this is, but it is riveted. I wonder if it's transit.
Oh,
Or it could be transit, or it could be it could be just a conduit. It could be stormwater,
yeah.
or raw water.
But it's so interesting that it's in this tunnel. Like, this must have been a lot of work.
Ton of work, and it was valuable enough that they wanted to be able to get in here and do maintenance on it. So
Yeah.
The designer said, "Hey, this is critical infrastructure. We got to get in here and be able to take care of this pipe over time. So we need physical access to maintain it." So that was
instead of digging it up.
That
makes sense.
Yeah.
So here's
yeah. Wow. Yep. So that's the new stuff. That's what we're doing today.
Yeah. See, this looks so expensive, but it also makes a lot more sense. Like, if you can have these big tunnels underground all over, and then have everything you need running through them, then you can maintenance those, you can organize them. It just feels a little more modern to me, but I don't know if that's true, and I don't know if it's even feasible economically. But
the big digs, we call them the moles. So if you Googled mole, underground mole, we've created machines now in the technology where we can start doing large diameter borings in rock, hundreds of feet below our cities. Often for our new stormwater systems, urbanization, even these transit or just utility corridors. But I don't know if you got that machine, but these moles are new technologies that are getting better and better and better, and they're getting more and more relevant and useful for curing, or just the only thing we can do is not dig up these streets, but dig a new corridor below the streets.
Right.
And these things are now available to us as a technology, just to bore through rock and underground. You got to have the right material, though. I mean, it's got to be pretty stable. Unstable gets a little tricky and expensive. You got to follow up with concrete and reinforced concrete, et cetera, behind this machine as it digs.
Jeez, these are huge.
They're huge. They can be huge. This is the kind of machine that was that did the roadway underneath the ocean between France and England.
Right.
And they left this machine in the underground. They left them in place under the ocean, but you can drive under the ocean now.
Yeah.
Between them. Wow. But this was the machine. So these things are getting more and more practical for us. But not cheap.
This thing is huge.
It's
great. I have so many questions. It looks so like it doesn't do much. You'd almost expect a huge blade or something, but you kind of have these small, very, I'm sure there's a lot of research that goes into how to space out each blade and putting it in the right place so that it's perpetual.
And they change it depending on the soil type and the rock type. And there are different designs, but they're basically like a train. They go on a rail, and it hydraulically pushes the cutter head, which is the part you're showing, and it just has various cutters on there depending on the material, and pushes through.
Oh, that's wild. The Boring Company, that's the one I obviously know of just because of Elon and how he wants to do underground tunnels for transportation for his Teslas.
In an earthquake zone. He's got this. Yeah, he's got this idea where he has a flexible tube down there that he leaves that can withstand the earthquake. I don't know. That's
pretty cool.
I guess I'm kind of going why, but
I mean, doesn't it make more sense to go down than up? At least from a cost standpoint.
It's kind of like going to Mars versus saving this planet. This planet's much better.
Yeah. Well, which one? So, which one do you think makes more sense, going up or going down?
It's economic. If you're in those city photos, probably going down is the cheapest thing. But if you don't have those conditions, which is mostly what we don't have, going surface is best.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But that we talk about city planning, a little bit of city planning in the 1700s, that even today, city and intergovernmental planning between cities that are competing for tax base on highways, and they're competing more than they are playing together. And we're still fighting, doing things, like we should. Isn't that cool?
This is so cool.
Yeah.
It's so this is actually, the Boring Company is, I believe, the Boring Company, or maybe I think it's Boring Company. It's in Bastrop.
Okay.
And it's really close to where my dad lives.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually drove by this, and I saw they have one of these like sticking out of the ground as almost like a sign, right? And it's pretty cool. It was pretty cool to see. And it's a huge, really nice facility, obviously.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy what some people are working on nowadays.
Well, and it's often small diameters available. I mean, I remember doing a project not long ago, 10 years ago, where I had to go under a river, and my mind was in this camp of, we got to cut this river and put 3-foot diameter water main in here. I was like, oh, the permits, the issues with the river, what are we going to do with the water? And that's just the classic way of approaching it. And then, new technology, I had a different solution. We took a boring machine, and it bored under the river, and it dragged solid plastic water main under the river. And we never even messed with the river. It blows me out. It's just like, wow, this is so cool. And just 10 years before, we were open cutting the river and trying to deal with the water and trying to lay a pipe in there. Yeah, it's crazy. So,
well, what excites me is, obviously, it's so easy to point at problems. We're pretty good at that on this podcast, and it's very overwhelming. But it does excite me that there is so much to work on here at home. So there's a lot of opportunity in that. And then also you've got, for better or worse, if you like him or hate him, Elon's working on some pretty interesting problems. It's cool to see that, this tunnel takes, I think it looks like 5 days. So you've got like day 0, day 2, day 3, and then the final day 5. So
we look at those water mains in that street. I mean, Elon's one person. There's lots of people working on it. You look at the pipes in the city, and we now have bursting machines where we put a device in the pipe, and it travels the pipe and breaks the pipe while it drags a new pipe behind it.
Wow.
And we can actually even drag a little bit bigger pipe depending on the soil. So sometimes we can actually make the pipe a little bit bigger in some cases. And it robotically drills holes where the surfaces are. So you don't ever have to dig it open.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
so there's cool stuff going on to figure out.
Oh my gosh. Super cool. So let's transition into one final area before we wrap up here. And it's energy. So
this question I came up with the other day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty it's also scary because there's a growing demand for energy, obviously, especially with things like, I didn't even really think of this until I heard about it, but you've got like data centers, you've got cryptocurrency, and AI are vastly increasing our need for energy. And then we're also we're trying to move away from
data, not just energy, but pushing data through infrastructure. Yeah,
exactly. So we're trying to move towards, clean energy, away from, gas, fossil fuels. So I think this is, like you said, maybe a little low, but about 60% of electricity generated in 2023 was from fossil fuels, coal, natural gas, petroleum, and other gases. About 19% was from nuclear energy, and 21% from renewable energy sources. So the big question is, what happens when you try to take all the energy that's coming from pipes underground and you move that to electricity, for example, and move it over our heads? And that, I mean, that kind of broke my brain for a second.
You can't bury that stuff. The big stuff, you don't bury it. You can't afford to bury it because it generates too much heat.
Yeah. So you got to put it up in the
You
air.
can do it. It's just economically rough.
Right. Yeah, you have to have water around it or something.
You got to cool it. You got to cool that wire.
Yeah. So, I mean, is it that simple? We're going to have to, in the next, let's say 10 years, we're going to have a bunch of wires over our head.
What is the landscape? Because energy is not free. If you're going to move a car, physics is physics. We're pretty confident that physics is physics. If you take mass of a car and you need to accelerate it, it doesn't matter. It still takes the same amount of energy to move that mass and accelerate it. So it can be a motor with burning fossil fuel, or it could be electricity and electric motor. It's the same amount of energy to move the same mass and accelerate it the same. Nothing's free.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if we're going to change the way we heat our buildings from natural gas, and we're going to move to electric, and we're going to take our vehicles and plug them in our homes. So we're not getting fuel from a remote station. It's actually going to be our home. You're converting gas mains, gas at the gas stations to electricity, which doesn't get buried.
Right.
So what does our landscape look like? That's a lot of energy with new stuff that we're going to see over our heads. It's just a question. But it's actually a real question.
Yeah.
Our conversion, maybe we should think harder about solar panels because we might have a very ugly landscape.
That's true.
Going this route.
Well, again, I only share this because it's what I know. I'm sure, or I know there are so many other people and companies out there, but Elon Musk, great marketing, right? He has those solar panel shingles. That's a step in the right direction, I think. I mean, I don't know how they're performing, but at least on the surface, seems like a great move. Because you're right, if we have solar panels everywhere and wind turbines, it's just going to take up so much space and kind of be ugly.
Yeah. And where's the regulatory environment? Has it caught up with that? Can you put a power line in front of my view? I think you can because there's an electric easement there.
Jeez.
So all those views you have may get no longer a nice view.
Yeah.
But as your zoning and your planning and your regulatory environment prepared us for what's coming? It hasn't. How are we going to regulate these views and these view corridors and nature corridors? And, it's going to be visually ugly if we don't get a handle on it quick.
Right. Yeah.
It's just an interesting thinking. It's new. It's got to be thought about. I'm not sure that we're really.
I wonder if there's someone we can have on who's an expert in that topic, because I am curious. And, what I said at the beginning of this conversation was we're going to have to get creative to solve this. We can't just keep throwing money at things. And
this is a great example. I don't know if we could, but it'd be interesting to get like a leadership in like WAPA, Western Area Power Authority, or not sure the name of the East Coast, but there's these organizations that manage the grids and keep all these different utility companies viable within the grid because everybody's pumping water or pumping electricity in the grid, and there's this overall authority.
Right.
So I know that here it's WAPA, but
yeah,
it'd be interesting what their thoughts would be on all this stuff.
Let's make it happen then. We'll get someone on talk about this stuff so we can get some answers.
But water. You're,
yeah.
But there's a great new technology on filtering water. So excited about the new filtering technology for water. I'm not scared anymore. It's
really,
yeah.
Whoa. Now I'm intrigued. Well, how about we save that for the next episode then?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Miles.
Thanks for listening. If you found value in this episode, support us by sharing it with someone or leaving a review. In upcoming episodes, we'll discuss the realities of the industry today and what the future may look like. It's our belief that positive changes for architects and engineers is not the obligation of the industry, but rather a choice you make to reimagine how we work together. We invite you to join us in creating a world in which design professionals thrive. Learn about our mission and get involved by following us wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribing to our newsletter at leveldesignpartners.com.